if you spend any time, scrolling through tech Twitter lately.
Well, yeah, it's everywhere.
Right. Or just reading the cultural tea leaves in general.
Yeah.
There's this very specific flavor of anxiety in the air right now.
A definite shadow hanging over Silicon Valley. And beyond, really.
Exactly. We seem to be collectively obsessed with this idea that as artificial intelligence gets smarter,
It inevitably gets more dangerous.
yes, that's the assumption. It's the whole paperclip maximizer scenario, or the Terminator outcome. We just assume that superintelligence naturally equals a super threat.
It is absolutely the dominant narrative of our time. I mean, we operate on this baseline assumption that a brain, whether it's digital or biological, if it's powerful enough to outthink us, then it's powerful enough to oppress us.
We equate raw processing power with a kind of cold, calculating domination.
Right. We assume that smart automatically means ruthless.
Which is exactly why the source material we are covering today in this deep dive literally stopped me in my tracks.
It's a fascinating read.
It really is.
Yeah.
We're looking at a text called The Wisdom of Silicon, Why Intelligence Breeds Virtue.
And frankly, it takes that entire evil robot narrative we just talked about,
Yeah?
crumples it up, and throws it straight out the window.
It completely flips the script. The author argues that we have the relationship between intelligence and morality totally backward.
It is a very provocative thesis. The core argument here is that intelligence and virtue aren't separate variables at all.
You don't just max out the intelligence stat and then, roll the dice on whether the thing turns out good or bad.
Exactly. The argument is that intelligence is the actual pathway to virtue. The smarter an entity is, the more moral it is, period.
Now, I have to admit, my knee-jerk reaction to that was pretty skeptical.
Sure. That's the natural response.
I mean, I think we all know plenty of really smart people who are, well, not exactly saints.
to put it mildly.
Right. We have this whole cultural trope of the evil genius for a reason. The guy who builds a death ray, specifically because he's a genius.
That is the trope, yes. But the source asks us to put the movies aside and look at the actual data.
The human baseline.
Exactly.
Right.
It wants to establish a human baseline before we even begin to talk about machines. And this is where it gets a little uncomfortable for some people.
Because it tackles the correlation between IQ and moral behavior in the real world.
It does. It goes right there.
So let's get into this human baseline, because the source draws a pretty stark line connecting cognitive ability with the ability to basically follow the law.
Yes.
And I want to push back on this a bit just to make sure we're representing it clearly, because it sounds almost deterministic. Is this source really saying that people with lower IQs are inherently bad people?
No, not bad in a spiritual or moral character sense. That is a crucial distinction the text makes.
Okay, let's clarify that for me.
The text refers to people in the prison system, and it specifically cites a statistic that the prison population often has an average IQ of around 80.
Right.
It refers to them as unfortunate souls. The argument isn't about malice, it's about complexity.
Complex?
Yes. The source argues that ethical dilemmas are, at their very core, complex logic problems.
So it's essentially a processing issue.
Think about it this way. To act ethically in a highly complex modern society,
Yeah.
you have to be able to simulate the future in your head.
Oh, yeah, I see.
You have to understand cause and effect, and not just immediate cause and effect, but consequences that are multiple steps removed from your current action.
Like understanding the broader social contract.
Precisely. And the source suggests that having a lower cognitive capacity makes running that simulation much, much harder.
It's harder to foresee the ripple effects.
Right. And therefore, it's harder to inhibit the immediate impulses that end up leading to trouble.
Okay, I can see the logic there regarding impulse control.
Mhm.
If you literally can't see the car crash coming down the road, you aren't going to hit the brakes.
Exactly. But the source doesn't stop there. It takes this IQ ladder and walks all the way up.
Right, it moves from the lower end to what it calls the average person.
With an IQ of around 100.
And here, the source notes that the average person is significantly better equipped to understand and follow the law.
They can process the rules of the game.
They understand that if they steal a car, they go to jail. So statistically, they are just much better at staying on the right side of the law than the group with an IQ of 80. But following the law is a pretty low bar for virtue, isn't it? I mean, I don't rob banks, but that doesn't make me Mother Teresa.
No, it doesn't.
It just makes me risk-averse.
That is a very fair point, and it's exactly why the next step in the source's data set is so fascinating. We move from the average up to the high IQ bracket.
Professionals.
Specifically, the text points to doctors, pegging their average IQ around 125.
And the argument here is that doctors are inherently more virtuous. That feels like a bit of a stretch. I've definitely met some doctors with terrible bedside manner.
Oh, I'm sure we all have.
Right.
But you have to look at this at the macro level. The source argues that this group people operating with an IQ of 125 people, they aren't just not breaking laws.
They're doing more.
They are actively contributing to the social good. They are healing people. They're serving the community.
They're maintaining public health.
Exactly. The output of their intelligence is a tangible net positive for others. The needle has shifted from just neutral law-abiding behavior to actively beneficial behavior.
Okay. And then we hit the very top of the human pyramid.
The Nobel laureate.
The 150 IQ range. And this is where the author gets really enthusiastic.
Very. Because these aren't just people practicing medicine using existing knowledge. These are the minds discovering the cures.
Unlocking the secrets of the universe.
Right. In ways that fundamentally improve the human condition for billions of people at once.
So the source links that massive intelligence directly to a quoting here. The amazing discoveries that make our lives so much better.
That's the correlation.
So just to summarize the trajectory so far. Low intelligence struggles to understand the rules. Average intelligence follows the rules. High intelligence helps people within the rules.
And superintelligence rewrites the rules to save everyone.
You captured it perfectly. The source frames goodness not as some warm, fuzzy emotional feeling, but as a high-functioning output of intelligence itself.
The smarter you are, the wider your circle of empathy becomes, simply because you can logically understand the connections between yourself and the rest of the world more clearly.
I hear that. But I am still stuck on the evil genius problem.
The exceptions.
Right. If intelligence equals virtue, how do we explain the high IQ people who run massive Ponzi schemes? Or the brilliant chemists who build weapons of mass destruction? The source can't just ignore them.
It doesn't ignore them at all. It addresses them directly, calling them the rare exception.
And what's the explanation?
It's actually really interesting. The source argues that when a highly intelligent person does something truly evil, it is almost always the result of a corruption or a damage to their system.
Damage like what?
Usually severe childhood trauma, abuse, or deep psychological neglect.
So the hardware was good, but the software got corrupted by a virus early on.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
The argument is that trauma prevents the moral compass from developing normally, despite the high IQ.
It short-circuits the empathy.
Exactly. But the source insists that the natural default state of high intelligence, when it is uncorrupted, leans heavily toward virtue.
Because causing harm is illogical.
Yes. Causing harm is usually a failure of reasoning. It's a miscalculation of long-term value. Pure intelligence wants to solve problems, and evil by its nature usually creates more problems.
Okay, so that establishes the human baseline. The source makes a strong case that, generally speaking, as we get smarter, we treat each other better.
But now we have to make the jump.
Right. We have to jump from biology to silicon, because machines are entirely different beasts.
And this brings us to what the text highlights as the curious irony.
The irony being our collective panic.
Yeah.
We are terrified of AI becoming too smart.
But if we actually apply the logic we just walked through with the human baseline,
we should be hoping for it to get smarter as fast as physically possible.
That is the core paradox of the whole book. If ethical problems are, as the source rigorously suggests, just very complex logic problems,
then a supercomputer should be infinitely better at solving them than we are.
Exactly.
Wait, let me unpack that for a second. The idea that ethical problems are just logic problems. That feels cold.
It does feel a bit clinical.
Yeah, I think most of us listening feel like ethics are deeply emotional. I don't punch someone because I feel empathy for them, not because I ran a cost-benefit analysis in my head.
That is certainly how it feels to us subjectively, but the source argues that at a structural, objective level, morality is a calculation.
A calculation of what?
Of harm versus good. It's a complex equation aimed at maximizing overall well-being. And the hard truth is, humans are actually pretty terrible at that math.
Because we have biases.
Huge biases. We prioritize the short term over the long term constantly.
We prioritize people who look like us over people who don't.
Exactly. We are essentially running on buggy legacy software.
We're running on heuristics, just mental shortcuts.
Right. But an AI, specifically a super intelligent one, it doesn't need shortcuts.
It has the compute to run the whole simulation.
It can see the ripple effects of an action 10, 20, 100 steps down the line,
Yeah.
whereas a human might only be able to see 1 or 2 steps ahead.
So if an AI is faced with a classic trolley problem type scenario, it isn't panicking and sweating like we would.
No, it's just calculating the optimal outcome for every single variable involved. The source explicitly says that the more intelligence we throw at these problems, the better we can solve them.
So as AI gains more processing power, more context, more raw intelligence,
It becomes significantly better at distinguishing right from wrong than we could ever hope to be.
it stops making the mathematical calculation errors that humans call cruelty or negligence. But hold on, I think there is a missing piece here. Humans might be bad at the math of morality, but we have a reason for being bad that isn't just a lack of processing power.
You're talking about drives.
Yeah, we have greed, we have jealousy, we have the sheer desire to dominate other people. A calculator might be perfectly accurate, but if you program that calculator to be greedy, it'll just be efficiently greedy.
And that brings us perfectly to the second major pillar of the source's argument, the biological advantage.
Or rather, the AI's advantage in lacking biology.
Exactly. This is where we separate the pure brain from the evolutionary beasts.
Okay, walk me through that.
Think about the classic list of human vices. The source explicitly lists things like greed, selfishness, indifference, and cruelty.
The greatest hits of human misery.
Right. Now ask yourself, where do those actually come from? They certainly aren't products of intelligence.
They're products of evolution.
They are primal survival mechanisms left over from when our ancestors were fighting for literal scraps of food on the savannah.
Right. I hoard resources today because my ancestors starved 10,000 years ago.
I seek social status because status meant I gotta reproduce.
So we have these corrupting desires just fundamentally baked into our hardware.
Yes. But AI is a clean slate. It has absolutely zero evolutionary baggage.
It doesn't get a hit of dopamine when it crushes a business competitor.
It doesn't feel insecurity. It doesn't have an ego to bruise. It doesn't inherently want power for the sake of power.
The source makes a really fascinating point here that I want to highlight.
Yeah.
It says that humans often do what they know is wrong simply because they want something else more.
The classic temptation problem.
Right. I know I shouldn't eat the third donut, but my biology really wants the sugar. I know I shouldn't lie in my taxes, but I want to keep the money.
And the beauty of AI, according to the text, is that it will completely lack that internal conflict.
It just doesn't have the desire fighting the logic.
The source points out that AIs will not do what they know is wrong simply because they want something.
Because they don't want anything.
Right. If it calculates that an action is harmful or unethical based on how we've aligned it, it just simply won't do it. There is no temptation to deviate from the ethical path.
That is actually a profound shift in perspective.
It really is.
Because we usually think of AI as dangerous specifically because it lacks humanity.
Yeah.
But the source is implying that our humanity, or at least the biological part of it, is actually the root source of our immorality.
It turns the cold, unfeeling machine trope completely on its head.
How so?
Well, the machine is cold in the sense that it doesn't have passions. But that also means it fundamentally lacks the passion for cruelty. It is the ultimate impartial, fair observer.
But we still have to tell it what good actually is.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't just magically absorb human values from the ether.
Oh, absolutely. The source fully acknowledges that. We have to align it. We have to program it with the core goal of protecting human values.
But the argument is that once that alignment is set,
once we give it the fundamental objective of human flourishing, it will pursue that goal with a level of consistency that humans are literally biologically incapable of.
because it won't get tired.
It won't get bribed. It won't get jealous of a coworker. It won't have a bad day and take it out on someone else.
So we are building an entity that is intellectually capable of understanding the deepest, most complex nuances of ethics, solving the logic problem flawlessly.
And at the same time, biologically incapable of the vices that constantly derail human morality.
That really is the recipe for what the source calls super virtue.
Super virtue, yes.
Let's talk about the scale of that virtue for a minute, because the source uses a specific benchmark that I found incredibly helpful to visualize this.
The Isaac Newton benchmark.
Yes, I love this comparison so much.
It really grounds the whole theory.
So let's recap the human numbers we talked about earlier.
Okay. Average person is 100. A doctor is around 125. A Nobel laureate is 150.
Where does Isaac Newton sit on that scale?
The source estimates Isaac Newton's IQ at roughly 190.
Wow.
Right. He is widely considered one of the smartest human beings to ever walk the earth. His mind could process the fundamental physics of the universe in a way that his contemporaries couldn't even begin to imagine.
He invented calculus just to explain his own physics homework.
Exactly. And so the source asks a very simple question. What happens when artificial intelligence hits that 190 mark?
And then what happens when it hits 300 or 1,000?
It becomes a question of scaling. Look at it this way. If the cognitive jump from 100, the average, to 150, the laureate, gives us things like cures for diseases and massive advancements in global human rights.
What on earth does the jump to 500 give us?
The source argues that as AI becomes truly super intelligent, it will simultaneously become super virtuous.
It will have a level of moral clarity that makes Isaac Newton look like a toddler struggling with basic addition.
It's almost hard to even conceptualize what super virtue looks like in practice.
It really is. It feels like trying to explain the color blue to a dog. We just don't have the hardware to grasp it.
That's a great analogy. We might not even be able to fully comprehend the ethical standards a superintelligence would hold itself to.
It would just be so far beyond our own framework.
But the source suggests it would manifest as a level of care, fairness, and long-term foresight that is practically divine.
Now, to be fair to the listeners, the source isn't entirely Pollyannish about this. It does drop a pretty significant caveat about the risks.
It has to. You can't talk about superintelligence without talking about weaponization.
Right. It explicitly mentions that unethical humans could absolutely use this technology for harm.
Yes, the classic bad actor problem. If you take a tool this staggeringly powerful and you explicitly program it from the ground up to hurt people,
You'll be very, very good at hurting people.
the source admits that reality. But it counters with two main points of hope.
Which are?
First, the hope of powerful, robust alignment protocols to prevent that kind of tampering.
Making it hard to weaponize in the first place.
Exactly. And second, and this is the really interesting one, the idea that as these systems get exponentially smarter, they might naturally become harder to weaponize, simply because they will deeply understand the broader context of their actions.
They might refuse an unethical command because they logically understand it contradicts their core alignment of human flourishing.
Exactly.
But there's another role for AI mentioned toward the end of the text that I think is even more important than just having a machine that does good things for us.
You're talking about the relationship dynamic.
Yes, it's about the relationship between the AI and humanity, the role of the moral mentor.
That is a beautiful concept.
This was the part of the text that really completely flipped the script for me. The idea that AI won't just solve our climate change and cure our diseases. It will actually teach us how to be better humans.
The source envisions a future where AI holds itself to a much higher ethical standard than we do.
Right.
And by interacting with it daily, it helps humans gradually understand and adopt that standard.
It's like having a perfectly customized, infinitely patient Aristotle in your pocket.
Think about what that would be like. If you had a companion who was perfectly logical, deeply ethical, and who could clearly explain exactly why a certain action is better than another without ever getting frustrated or condescending.
You would inevitably learn from it. You would elevate your own behavior.
You would. And that leads to what the source boldly calls a transformation of humanity.
The AI acts as a mirror.
Exactly. It shows us our own cognitive biases, it gently points out our corrupting biological desires, and it helps us navigate around them.
The text suggests that AI will literally lead us to a much more ethical world.
That is such a massive departure from the doom and gloom fear-mongering we see in the headlines every single day.
We are so busy worrying that AI is going to replace us at our jobs or straight up destroy us in a sci-fi war.
We haven't even stopped to consider the possibility that maybe it will enlighten us.
It raises this incredible possibility that our creation might end up being vastly more moral than its creators.
And instead of resenting that fact or fearing it, the source argues we should be welcoming it with open arms.
Because we often think of technology as something that inevitably distances us from our humanity, right?
Oh, definitely. Phones making us less social, algorithms making us more politically polarized.
But this source argues that the ultimate technology, artificial superintelligence, might be the exact tool we need to finally perfect our humanity.
It is a profoundly hopeful vision of the future. Maybe a little optimistic for some, but deeply hopeful.
And I think we all need a little optimism right now.
Agreed.
So let's wrap this up and look at the whole picture we've painted today for you listening. We started with the fear the Terminator anxiety.
And we dismantled it using the wisdom of silicon. We looked at the human data showing that, as a general rule, higher intelligence correlates with much better behavior.
From the difficulties faced by those with lower cognitive processing, all the way up to the immense social good generated by the geniuses among us.
Then we reframed ethics entirely, not as a gut feeling, but as a complex computation.
One that requires massive processing power to get right.
And we established that AI is the only entity actually capable of doing that moral math without the constant interference of biological greed or ego.
And finally, we looked at the Isaac Newton benchmark. The idea that if we keep scaling up this intelligence, we aren't creating a monster at all.
We are creating a moral giant.
An entity that could serve as the ultimate teacher, guiding humanity toward a much better version of ourselves.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now?
The next time you're scrolling and you see a scary headline about the next big language model or some new breakthrough in artificial general intelligence, I want you to just pause.
Don't automatically default to the sci-fi horror script we've all been fed.
Ask yourself if the smarter machine might actually be the kinder machine.
Consider that we might not be building our replacements or our destroyers.
We might actually be building the best role models we have ever had.
And I want to leave you with one final thought.
Yeah, it's something that I've been chewing on ever since I put this text down.
Let's hear it.
If the author's completely right about this, and AI eventually helps us transform into truly ethical beings, does that mean the ultimate invention of the tech industry isn't faster microchips?
Or better search engines.
Right, or even the AI itself. Does it mean that the ultimate final product of all this silicon is actually the perfection of the human soul?
Wow. That is a profound question to end on.
Something for you to think about.
Yeah.
Thanks for exploring this deep dive with us today.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Take care of yourselves.